Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miriam Aylward. I am Nessie's Executive Director, and I am broadcasting to you from my basement home office.
And I'm Susan Farber. I'm Nessie's Conference Manager, coming to you from my living room.
So welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you all are staying safe and healthy in these strange times. As many of you know, we rescheduled our annual conference, Building Energy Boston, to August 13th and 14th. We remain hopeful that we will all be able to be together at the end of the summer. In the meantime, we are thrilled to be partnering with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center to be offering the first of what we hope will be a series of pre-conference webinars. The presentation you're about to hear is entitled Getting to Zero, Bringing Residential Electrification to Scale. And it was originally scheduled as a sponsored breakout session at Building Energy Boston. I want to say thank you to the Mass CEC for your willingness to co-produce Nessie's first ever webinar and your support of our programming. I also want to say thanks to Bev Craig at Mass CEC for your vision and guidance. I want to say thank you to our speakers who you'll meet in a moment, Peter, Ellen, and Jacqueline. And thanks to Nessie's staff for pivoting so quickly to this new format for delivering content. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. We'll be sending out a follow-up email to everyone who attended to ask you for your feedback and also your ideas about how we can continue to be a resource for you remotely. Please do not be shy about telling us what you think. With that, I'll turn it over to Susan for a few announcements.
Hey, Miriam, everybody else is pretty much joining from their home offices. Do you want to share your fun fact about your home office?
Oh, sure. So behind me is a tapestry from 2004 that is hiding a heat pump water heater.
All right. Here's a fun fact about my home office. Sitting in my front window is a teddy bear. Parents in my town have asked everyone to put teddy bears in their windows so that when they take their young children out for a walk or out for a stroller ride, the kids stay engaged by looking for teddy bears. So maybe that's happening in your neighborhood too. It's a really sweet thing. We're going to take a moment now while I turn the program over to Peter McPhee from Mass CEC, our first speaker.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Miriam. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter McPhee from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, and I'm excited to kick off this first of the Building Energy Live sessions. I'm presenting from my guest room, so apologies for any toddlers you might hear crying in the room next door or any cats that nuzzle up against the webcam. So first off, I'd like to say that I'm really glad that we can all convene today over Zoom. I'm a little bit disappointed that Building Energy got pushed back to August due to the circumstances, but it gives me great faith to see that everybody's convening to continue in our efforts to tackle the ambitious challenge of decarbonizing, making more sustainable our buildings in the Northeast. So in proper Nessie tradition, I'm going to go through some introductions here, and each of us are going to provide one fun fact about our home office. So I'll go first. I'm Peter McPhee. I'm the Senior Director for Buildings at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. The fun fact about my home office is it's doubling currently as a daycare for a 1- and 3-year-old, which turns out is really effective for boosting productivity. Jacqueline?
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Guile with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. I work on the clean heating cooling team and then also with Peter on our buildings team. One fun fact about my home office, over the past couple months, the house next door to me has been doing a major renovation, so I've watched all the windows be replaced over the past couple weeks.
Hi, everyone. This is Beverly Craig with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. I work on low and moderate income programs. I will be moderating the question and answer portion of today's session. Ellen?
Last but not least, I hope. Ellen Tone, I am president of Mass Energize, a nonprofit in the greater Boston area working to engage residents around climate change, including electrification. And the fun fact about my office is I am staring at my road bike, which is on a wind trainer, which I broke out of the basement since I'm no longer able to go to my morning gym, it stares at me at the face to remind me to ride it at least for half an hour, 40 minutes a day if I can't go outside.
Great, thank you everybody, and thank you again to Nessie for putting together this session, even in these challenging circumstances, so much appreciated. So while these presenters all stem out of Massachusetts, what we're talking about today is really painting the broad landscape for the Northeast states, where many of these states have undertaken deep commitments to decarbonization in the coming 3 decades. So we're hopeful that in our presentation today, we're not only going to talk about some of the significant challenges that we're facing in doing this, but also that we currently have the solutions and the technologies, though they may not yet be fully mature, but they are in our hands to begin to make this transition. And we believe wholeheartedly that this transition will be a great opportunity for industry and businesses in the coming 3 decades. So I'll be kicking off the presentation talking about the scale of the buildings challenge in Massachusetts and beyond, and then talk a little bit about how residential electrification is really emerging as probably the most cost-effective solution to decarbonizing our residential building stock, and what those tools look like for delivering those changes across the industry and markets. I'll turn over to Jacqueline, who will be talking about some of the tools and programs available to homeowners and industry to begin turning these ideas into reality. And Jacqueline will be announcing 2 brand new programs at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center we'll be launching in the coming months, so stay tuned for those. Ellen will be batting cleanup from Mass Energize, and she'll be talking about some of the tools that can help empower communities and residents and the associated industry working with them to begin making the aggressive changes of bringing building electrification to scale across the region. So MassCC is happy to be sponsoring this session, but who is MassCC and what do we do? So the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center is one of the tools of the Commonwealth to help deliver on the Commonwealth's aggressive goals for decarbonizing our economy. Our core mission is innovation, which we do through working with the emerging technologies, businesses, industry, and workforce to deliver upon these goals, and to do so by reducing costs of doing that and also growing a robust and equitable economy in the Commonwealth. You may be familiar with some of our programs, such as our internships program, our clean heating and cooling rebate programs, or our ACES energy storage program, or even some of our newer transportation programs, including our Act Now program. We've also had significant work that we've been doing on facilitating offshore wind project development, as well as that we operate the Wind Technology Testing Center, where we test wind turbine blades for land-based and offshore wind, as well as our Marine Commerce Terminal, which will help stage the construction of some of our first large-scale offshore wind projects in the Northeast. So I'd like to start off with a poll. So what portion of Massachusetts greenhouse gas emissions come from on-site fossil fuel combustion for buildings? Is it 5 to 15%, 16 to 25%, 26 to 35%, or 36 to 45%? I'm going to turn over to Robert from Nessie, who's facilitating the polling in the background. So thank you, Robert. We have a strong showing for 26% and above. A couple of people in the 5 to 15% range. We'll give a few more seconds as these come in. We have a lot of responses, which is great. 136 responses. We'll give 5 more seconds here.
Okay, about 5 more seconds for this poll until we close it.
Great. So we see we're pretty close tie between. Oh, C came out with a slight lead at 43% against a 39% for D. So. Which is great to see because that is correct. 27% of greenhouse gas emissions in Massachusetts come from buildings. So impressive showing from our well-educated audience here. So what we know from all of our homes, our businesses, and our institutions is that they use a lot of energy. And we know this firsthand through the energy bills we see. And in fact, the average household in Massachusetts spends $2,500 on energy costs, which can be a true burden for some households. And all of that translates to significant greenhouse gas emissions, so 27%. And to put that into context, that's larger than the entire emissions of our electricity sector in Massachusetts, second only to our transportation sector. So it's an enormous chunk of our greenhouse gas emissions. When we talk about clean energy, oftentimes we hear people talking about solar, offshore wind, hydropower, but it's often easy to overlook the great challenges we have in decarbonizing our building stock. And we put that in the context of the aggressive goals of the Northeast states to decarbonize, and with Massachusetts having a proposed net zero carbon emissions limit by 2050, we see that we have enormous work to do in decarbonizing our buildings. And that's a significant challenge across the 2 million buildings in Massachusetts alone. And why is that such a challenge? Because each of these buildings has a unique circumstance, individual ownership structures, and different goals in decarbonizing those buildings. And if we're aiming to make more efficient and electrify all of our buildings by 2050, it translates to over 3% of all of our buildings needing to undertake these significant transitions every year. In Massachusetts, that's 70 to 100,000 buildings per year, and even more when we talk about the entire Northeast region. So a significant undertaking that we need to be starting now. And the reason we have to start it now is because the decisions made for building modifications can have implications for 15, 20, 30, or even 50 years due to the length of equipment. And that really only leaves us one, maybe two chances to get it right before 2050. On top of that, we've seen a lot of communities going down a pathway of looking at requiring all electric buildings for new construction or renovations. And even one in Massachusetts has already officially made that decision to go there. So the time to begin this work is now, both for addressing our goals for carbon reductions as well as really meeting some of the local mandates that we're seeing. So we talk a little bit about the greenhouse gas emissions implications of buildings, but how about the financial implications? So I'd like to switch to another poll here. So on average, how much of annual income do low-income Massachusetts households spend on energy? Is it 1 day's income, 1 week's of annual income, 2 weeks of income, or 1 month of their annual income that's spent on energy? I'm going to turn it back over to Robert. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, please take a moment to complete this poll. This poll will be closing in about 10 seconds. Okay, thank you.
Wow, okay, excellent. 102 people, representing 62% of the vote, chose 1 month of income being spent on energy. And that is correct, which was surprising for me to hear that, but it does make sense when we talk about the significant dollars we're spending. So obviously a significant burden that can be disproportionate on lower income households. So when we look at what we're spending on energy, it's also important to think about how this varies geographically. So what this map represents in the red and orange areas in Massachusetts are areas that are more dependent on high-cost heating fuels, such as oil, electric resistance, or propane to heat their homes and businesses. And what we see is a lot of these rural areas or more remote areas don't have access to natural gas and are spending a lot more money on fuels. And that really can exacerbate some of the challenges that we see with income disproportionality of energy burden. However, with building electrification, energy efficiency, we see that as a great opportunity to be reducing costs for lower income households or areas that have disproportionate cost of high cost heating fuels, where making buildings more efficient and transitioning them away from those high cost fuels can really deliver a significant benefit for those homeowners. So what exactly is the strategy for reducing emissions and ultimately eliminating emissions from buildings in the next 30 years? So what we have here is a figure that represents on the vertical axis the greenhouse gas emissions associated with heating for an example home. And on the horizontal axis, we see the different kinds of heating fuels that are used for the home. So today in 2020, we say if you're using electric baseboard heating or oil, that you'll get approximately 9 tons of emissions from that. For natural gas, we have direct emissions of 6.5 tons, and then additional emissions from the leaking gas, which can range bring that up to 8, 10, or even 12 tons of emissions per year, depending on how you count it. However, for heat pumps installed and operated today, we see that those emissions are already significantly lower, where an air source heat pump might contribute to about 3.5 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, and a ground source heat pump about 2.5 tons. And we fast forward to 2050, we see that for our oil and natural gas households that we've tightened up those buildings and we squeezed the last bit of efficiency out of those boilers, and we're able to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from those buildings by about 35%. On the other hand, for our electric heating technologies for the heat pumps, those emissions have gone to zero because the electricity that we're using is now essentially 100% clean, and we're able to have zero carbon heating. And this concept is known as strategic or beneficial electrification. And it's the same idea where with electric vehicles, where you get immediate emissions reductions today by transitioning to more efficient technology. And then as our electricity grid becomes cleaner and cleaner, those emissions ultimately go to zero. So as we venture into this new decade and begin to undertake some of this really significant work hitting our 2050 goals, what are some of the key industry concepts that industry needs to be thinking about when we make this transition? So first, equity. If we're going to be transitioning 3% of our buildings every year, we can't depend on the higher income households who are highly motivated. We need to be delivering electrification and energy efficiency for low income households, for renters, for all types of properties across our states. Consumers, how do we take energy efficiency and heat pumps and move it from a fringe concept being considered to one that's really a baseline idea for every time a contractor visits a household and for every time a homeowner is considering what to do to improve their home? Systems and not technologies. When we talk about decarbonizing households, electrification alone really isn't sufficient to deliver what we need. We need to be seeing electrification tied in with energy efficiency and shell improvements, which will almost always deliver cost reduction for the consumer, higher levels of comfort, and help these technologies deliver on the high efficiency that they promise. Zero over time. This approach requires that we take advantage of the natural building replacement opportunities where a home is being renovated or a piece of equipment is nearing the end of life and needs to be replaced, and that the work we're doing engages with those opportunities to transition them to the higher efficiency and electric technologies at that time. And as I mentioned, because of the long duration of some of these products, we really need to take advantage of those opportunities to do this cost effectively. Innovation. Innovation is key to making this transition happen because it will deliver lower costs for the technologies and the system we're implementing, and also accelerate the rate that we can deliver on these transitions. And innovation is required on the technology side, as well as the system and implementation side and the business model side. And that's something that falls on all levels of the industry to bring this to scale. And as we talk about the myriad barriers that face broad transitions and bringing the scale of residential electrification, it really necessitates long-standing and effective comprehensive programs through our energy efficiency providers and state agencies to help industry move forward with making these changes across our states. So now I'm going to transition to talking about some of the specific solutions for home electrification. So the first solution has nothing to do with electricity at all. Well, sort of it does, but the first thing to do is weatherization through insulation and aggressive air sealing for buildings. And as we all know, doing that reduces operational costs for heating, air conditioning for a building, and increases comfort levels. But in addition to that, for electrification, doing so can reduce the upfront costs by making the heat pump a smaller system and allowing it to operate more efficiently. So it's a win-win where you're both reducing the upfront costs by weatherizing and you're reducing the operational costs. And the technology for air sealing has advanced greatly in the last several years to the point where we can bring a lot of homes to a really tight envelope and reduce air infiltration to the level that it may even be necessary to add a heat recovery ventilation system, which will bring fresh air into the building. So once a building is insulated and well sealed, there's two types of heat pumps that we see broadly implemented across Massachusetts and Northeast states. So air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. So air source heat pumps, which look a lot like an air conditioning system, have an outdoor unit which absorbs the thermal energy from the outside, amplifies it using the compressor, and delivers it inside for useful heat all throughout the winter, which you can see through this diagram. The picture in the top right corner shows a ductless indoor head in a living room. And modern technologies can be implemented with that, but they can also be, there's ducted versions available. There are radiator-looking versions available that can be mounted on the floor, and which can really kind of fit any kind of building need. And at the bottom, you see this is what an outdoor unit looks like for an air source heat pump. These technologies offer great benefits in that they're delivering both heating and cooling through the same system, which reduces maintenance costs. And when you're paying for the heat pump, you're really paying for two. You would otherwise be paying for a heating and a cooling system. Ductless systems offer significant configurability benefits where you don't have to run ductwork throughout a home. So it can both reduce costs where you might otherwise be spending tens of thousands of dollars on ductwork, but can also allow you to solve some challenging problems where you might just not be able to install ductwork in a home. And ducted air source heat pumps are also available, and many of those can actually integrate with existing ductwork and can be a great replacement for a failing air conditioning system or a furnace. You can work to transition that home to a heat pump. Ground source heat pumps are fundamentally similar to air source heat pumps, but instead of using the outdoor air temperature to deliver thermal energy, they use a relatively constant energy, thermal energy from underground, which is about 50 or 55 degrees all year long. So you can see that diagram here on the bottom part of your screen. And to the right, you can see a project that we did in Bolton through part of our Heat Smart programming, where a big drilling rig is coming in to drill the outdoor well. So ground source heat pumps also deliver both heating and cooling throughout the year, and but they can actually do it in a more efficient way than even an air source heat pump because they're using that constant temperature underground. In addition to that, ground source heat pumps offer the benefit of that outdoor loop, that thing that's being drilled in that picture there, lasting 50 to even 100 years. So it offers a really strong economic benefit by installing the project where you're making an investment today, but it can have a very long-term benefit in paying off for your home. So both air source and ground source heat pumps are suitable for climates in Massachusetts and the Northeast states. In fact, we've seen even air source heat pumps installed in Alaska and Canada, and we have great faith that when they're installed correctly in the right kind of home that has sufficient air sealing and weatherization, that these can deliver heating in even some of the coldest climates. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jacqueline Guile. And I think as Susan mentioned towards the beginning, we are collecting questions through the Q&A function of Zoom. You can enter them there. And after Jacqueline's presentation, we'll turn it over to Bev, who will be addressing some of these questions.
Great, thanks, Peter. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. So as Peter mentioned, I'm going to talk about tools that residential customers can use to electrify their homes. If you're an architect, builder, or other clean energy professional, using these programs is a great way to sell clean energy solutions to homeowners. So the first step that all homeowners should take if they're in Mass Save territory is to get a free home energy assessment and air seal and insulate their home. Mass Save will pay for the cost of air sealing and 75% of the cost of insulation. There are two main pathways that homeowners can take to get a home energy assessment. The first is to contact Mass Save to schedule this assessment. Following the assessment, homeowners will receive recommended upgrades and a list of contractors that they can use to do that upgrade. The second path is to contact a home performance contractor directly. This is still a free assessment, and these contractors can be found on the Mass Save website. Through this path, the home performance contractor will give the homeowner recommended upgrades and a quote to do that work directly. Weatherization through these programs can be highly complementary to building electrification, and identifying and streamlining weatherization for customers can add to a business's value proposal. Once homeowners have received a free home energy assessment, there are some great programs that they can take advantage of and reduce the upfront cost of electrifying their homes. One program that Mass Save offers is the Renovations and Addition program. When homeowners are adding an addition or renovating their home, they can go through this program to receive an incentive to upgrade the home performance of their entire home instead of just focusing on the renovation or addition. Rebates up to $10,000 are available, but homeowners must contact a HERS rater, known as third-party verifiers, on the MassSave website and do a blower door test prior to doing any demo work. You can sign up for this program through a HERS rater on MassSave's website. Another great program is the Department of Energy Resources Home MVP program. This program offers free home energy assessments and rebates for energy efficiency upgrades. The rebates homeowners receive is based off of the amount of energy upgrades, and the rebates average around $5,000. All homeowners in Massachusetts are eligible, so it's a great option for homeowners that do not qualify for the MassSave assessment. Although if you do live in MassSave territory, you can also opt to go through the Home MVP program instead of the free home energy assessment through MassSave. To participate in this program, you can go through a contractor on the Department of Energy Resources website. With both the renovations and additions and the Home MVP program, homeowners can finance these energy upgrades through the 0% MassSave heat loan. When deciding what program to go through, homeowners should weigh their incentive options and determine which path is the best to reduce their upfront cost of electrifying their home. Helping homeowners with this process can help make the overall value proposal of building electrification higher. It'll also guarantee cheaper and more efficient operational and costs and greater levels of comfort. So now we're going to switch over to a poll. We're curious to hear from you guys, which of the following have you or your landlord done in your home? You can select all that apply. A home energy assessment, air sealing and insulation, solar PV, heat pumps, or electric vehicles.
Okay, please take a moment to complete the poll. All right, this poll will close in about 10 seconds. All right, thank you very much.
Great, so it looks like a lot of you guys have had home energy assessments and air sealing and insulation done, which are great first steps to electrifying your home. If you haven't had a home energy assessment, I would really recommend it since you can get discounted or free air sealing and insulation. So just a reminder for everyone, if you have any questions, you can type them into the Q&A portion on your Zoom controls. So I'm going to, sorry about that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about a couple of new initiatives that Mass CEC is launching this spring to help facilitate building decarbonization statewide. This month, Mass CEC is launching a public awareness campaign called Clean Energy Lives Here around clean heating and cooling technologies and decarbonizing buildings in general. There are 4 main parts of the campaign. So first, we're looking to engage with consumers and increase awareness of clean energy solutions. We had a survey done and we found out that about 3/4 of Massachusetts residents are not at all familiar with clean heating and cooling technologies. We also want to educate consumers and industry members. We want people to understand that these opportunities are available and the benefits of switching to clean energy are there. The next portion is to pledge and plan. Through the pledge, consumers would commit to and plan for a zero over time building decarbonization. This means that they would pledge to committing to clean energy and transitioning over the next 5 to 10 years as their systems reach the end of life and need to be replaced. The pledge is aimed to serve as a reminder for homeowners that they've made this commitment. We'll be giving them a pledge certificate and a window decal so that they can hang these up in their home as a reminder that they've made this commitment. We'll also be helping them implement a plan by filling out a survey or worksheet that shows them when certain systems in their home are going to fail and when they should think about replacing these systems. The last part of the campaign is to facilitate consumer action. So we'll be connecting consumers with resources and installers so that they can make the transition to clean energy. Mass CEC will be running this campaign through the end of 2020, and we're looking to expand the campaign regionally in 2021. We'll be advertising building decarbonization through a number of approaches. The logo on the top left of my slide will appear on all of our campaign materials. We'll also be creating a microsite out of Mass CEC's website that will have resources and consumer guides for homeowners to find out about solutions and steps to transition to clean energy, find installers, and find links to other helpful resources. With our Clean Energy Lives Here guides, we're looking to compile the information and resources needed for both residents and the industry to move forward with building electrification. There are a lot of good resources out there from organizations like NEEP that are distilling technical best practices for industry use. We'll also be doing some advertising through the campaign. We'll have digital ads on platforms like Facebook, streaming radio through Pandora, and physical advertising on recycling bins and blue bike stands in downtown Boston. We're planning to do the bulk of the advertising in September when people are hopefully back at work, no longer thinking about coronavirus, and also thinking about heating season. So I'm gonna switch briefly over to Peter, who's gonna talk about how this campaign could apply to him in his own home.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Sorry about that. So I put myself in the shoes of a typical homeowner. I live in a 120-year-old house, pretty drafty and heated by oil. Here's three of my best co-workers. And if you ask them about our home energy systems, they think they're pretty neat. So my daughter and Kat really like the truck and the nice man that comes by once a month. But my son thinks that the oil in the basement's a little bit stinky. But for me, I am a motivated homeowner who's looking to transition my home to being run on clean energy systems in the coming years. So the resources available through the Clean Energy Lives Here program will be critical for me, both to educate myself and become aware of what options are available, and also, I believe, to the contractors I'll be working with. There will be a clean energy home plan that I can use to document what systems I have in my home, what options there are to replace them when those systems get towards the end of life. And along with that, there's a pledge that I can use to commit to making those changes as my systems need replacement. So with an older home and older systems, I've made the commitment on pledge to decarbonize my home by 2023 by electrifying the end uses and utilizing the clean energy available, clean electricity available to me through my city. So that's my Clean Energy Lives Here plan.
Great, thanks, Peter. So we're curious again to hear from you guys. In your opinion, what part of the Clean Energy Lives Here campaign would most effectively increase awareness of the general public about building electrification? So pick the two that you think would be the most effective: the downloadable guides, website, advertising, pledge, and the Clean Energy Home Plan.
Okay, please take about 10 seconds to submit your answers for the poll.
Great, thanks everyone. So it looks like people think that advertising will be the most effective, followed by the Clean Energy Home Plan, downloadable guides, our website, and the pledge. Thank you. So I'm going to shift now to a different program that Mass CEC is also launching this spring, and that is the Triple Decker Design Challenge. So through this program, Mass CEC is hoping to find scalable models to decarbonize triple deckers through things like weatherization, electrification, and the use of renewables in a cost-optimized way. I'm sure most of you are familiar with triple deckers. We've all seen them around the state, or we lived in them at some point. I currently live in a triple decker, and it's incredibly energy inefficient, and I have really high heating bills. So Mass CEC will be offering prizes starting at $15,000 for winning submissions, and we're hoping to award about 9 prizes And we'll have a category that we're calling BYOB, or Bring Your Own Building, so you can design around your own triple-decker building. Through this competition, we'll be recruiting applicants from design build firms, architects, and any other qualified applicants. So there will be 2 different tracks for this design competition. The first is the cost optimized retrofit, which is aimed at increasing energy efficiency of a triple-decker using its existing layout. We're looking to find out what's the balance between putting in upfront investments like weatherization and electrification and low-term operational costs. The second path will be a 3+ retrofit, which is aimed at increasing energy efficiency while also adding an additional unit. Adding another unit could be a great time to increase the energy efficiency of the entire triple-decker. And we're looking to find out through this track if the revenue from the additional unit could pay for part of the energy efficiency upgrades of the entire building. One other thing that's new in this competition is that we'll be looking at minimizing the embodied carbon of materials through our design submissions. So that'll be one of the selection criteria that applicants will need to consider when designing these retrofits. If you're interested in the competition, we do have a survey, and this will also go out with the slides after this presentation. And look out for the request for proposals, which we will be launching this May. So lastly, I'm going to talk about the whole home air source heat pump pilot program. MassEC is working with installers and motivated residents to support the design and installation of whole home heat pumps and fossil-free appliances, such as induction stoves and heat pump water heaters. Through this, we're hoping to identify the best, most cost-effective approaches to transitioning buildings to 100% air source heat pump heating. Incentives are available for new construction homes that do not have any fossil fuel hookups and existing buildings that are displacing natural gas. Homeowners that are installing air source heat pumps that are displacing something other than natural gas can apply for incentives through the Mass Save program. We also, last month, just added an additional incentive for existing buildings that have a blower door test done prior to installation. Since this is a pilot, we've been posting what we've learned through the program through monthly blog posts, and I would recommend checking those out. We talk about things like heat load calculations, system sizing, and how to increase system efficiency. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Bev, who's going to moderate some questions.
Hi, everybody. We've had a lot of great questions. I've been trying to answer some of them that are more specific just online, but we've had a couple really good sort of broad questions. One from Christine about how can we counteract the default HVAC systems, the sort of gas-based heat in multifamily buildings. Developers and owners are unfortunately still very primarily interested in the lowest cost initial cost. But every building built today is going to be around for at least 2 decades with that heating system.
So yeah, that's
go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, that's certainly a challenging question. I mean, I think there's a mix of ways to do that. I think understanding how consumers and tenants are paying bills versus the owner is a challenging question. But I think there's a, you know, when you have the sort of split incentive issue where tenants are paying the bills, there's certainly there's a value to having the more efficient systems and lower cost. But I think we need to be both educating industry about the benefits of the technologies. Also, it's important to understand that, you know, there may be future requirements that some of these buildings will have to be lower carbon, much like New York City has currently planned. And I think getting ahead of the curve and installing efficient systems today is a good motivation to focus on.
And we are running a little late, so we don't want to answer too many questions here. I'm just going to include one more, which was about, are there federal and state incentives for ground source heat pumps and air source heat pumps?
So MassEC does have a residential ground source heat pump program, And you can find out more information on the Mass CEC website or reach out to us. Mass CEC offers $2,000 for every heating ton, and that is capped at 5 tons or $10,000. And we do also have residential air source heat pumps incentives available through our whole home pilot program, which I touched on earlier. And there are also incentives available through the Mass Save.
And I'll just add that the federal government also offers the investment tax credit for ground source heat pumps, which is currently 26%, which can be a substantial driver. And that will be reducing in the next 2 years, but it's available to everyone in every state.
So we want to have enough time for Ellen to present. So we will take more questions at the very end of the presentation after Ellen's had her chance. Ellen?
All right, you can see my screen, I believe. Can you see the slides, Bev?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Peter and Jacqueline, for providing some wonderful technical information and access and information about rebates. As someone who just installed a heat pump, I'm both kind of a user of the experience and someone trying to encourage more of this to happen. Mass Energize is a nonprofit based in Massachusetts, but very interested in working with communities all across the Northeast to help engage residents to take action to address our climate emergency. And we are providing a series of set of tools and resources to help communities do that. We were started by individuals working in their own individual communities, most of us on our energy committees, but who were also active at a community level. And a gap that we really saw was how to engage residents to take action in their own homes. And our buildings the residential part of our buildings is a significant percentage, as Peter was talking about the GHG emissions from buildings. I'm gonna make sure my camera is sort of well aligned here. Our general approach at Mass Energize is that we would like to create a mass movement of individuals changing their behavior and making different choices. That mass movement in a household level, we believe, is also going to fuel a broader set of systems change. It's really our antidote to despair. We believe that we shouldn't be promoting one set of actions at the exclusion of others. So in engaging with communities, we want to promote solar, we want to promote electrification, we want to promote food choices that are also reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and electrification is a big part of what we are promoting. So again, I want to reemphasize, although we're based in Massachusetts, we are very interested in working across the Northeast. I'm going to talk about 3 things, but spend the most on the first. We have 3 sets of tools that we'll be offering. One is a customizable community engagement software. We're currently working with 5 communities, one in Wayland, Massachusetts, Energize Wayland, JCAN, the Jewish Climate Action Network, which is a series of congregations across Massachusetts, Green Newton, Energize Framingham, and folks in Concord, Massachusetts, Cooler Concord. And I'll turn to that in a second. I just want to highlight a few other things that I'll spend less time on. We are also compiling information and playbooks for campaigns, including a series of outreach we've done on heat pumps, convening 4 events in 2 communities with over 250 people attending, and we've had over 100 and some odd heat pumps installed. And then we are providing support and umbrella to a newly formed Heat Smart Alliance, which is over 16 communities in Massachusetts, many of whom had Mass CEC funding to promote heat pumps as part of their Heat Smart efforts, and have now organically continued to meet and support each other in their outreach, sorting through technical issues, discussing strategies. So we'll spend most of our time here on the software, but I'm happy to talk to people afterwards about our resources on campaigns and how to get in touch with the Heat Smart Alliance. So let's take a look at the software. I'm going to show you a site for one community, which is in Wayland, Massachusetts, which is actually where I live. But it's what we really want people to understand, that this is a highly customizable tool. Working at the local level and getting folks to do something, we've found much greater traction when we provide tools and resources that look and feel like your community as opposed to a generic website. And so our software allows each community to put their own pictures up here. You're looking at our flooded library from a previous significant storm event. Make their own goal. In Wayland, it's half of all households will take some action to address our climate emergency. And that translates into a certain number of households engaged and a number of actions completed that communities can specify and have show up in their software. And then we have 4 categories or 4 buckets that communities populate with their own content. We provide a library of content, template write-ups, template photos, and communities then upload them again to make it work for their community. So let's just take a quick dive into actions for a second. And we can see that when you do that, let's say you're working in a different community, you're a local organizer. So I neglected to say, just thinking about the NESI audience, why would you even work with us and work on this? Well, you all live in communities, and maybe some of you are involved in community leadership efforts in your communities around climate change or electrification. Maybe you're a contractor that installs a lot of heat pumps and HVAC systems and is interested in making sure people understand how these things work and what their options are. And maybe we find that people are more believable about information that isn't just coming from one contractor, but a website that's made up of content from a variety of different sources. Or maybe you're a policymaker working at a municipal level or state level, and you want to help spur more community engagement and community outreach to really mobilize action. So on our actions page, which again you get to populate, you can sort by category, you can sort by impact. We have an embedded greenhouse gas emissions calculator. You can sort by cost and those actions that are relevant to renters or homeowners. I want to just give you an example of green heating and cooling, which would be heat pumps. So if you clicked on heat pumps, you'd see that we think it has a significant greenhouse gas emission impact, as Peter noted. It can be costly, as the speakers previously noted. We're logged into my account here, so we can see that I've actually done this one. The software allows a description of the action, steps to take, which again you specify. In our case, we've been very successful having local heat pump coaches, much like solarized coaches, to guide people through the process. And you can read about what's happened with your neighbors with their testimonials. For those who want deeper dive, more information, how does air source differ from heat pump? What are websites I can go to? That can all be uploaded here as well. Second, if I want to take a look at is teams. We've found that it's been very effective to give communities an option to create teams within their communities to encourage friendly competition. In Wayland, we've got 2 teams. One of the communities we're working with, the Jewish Climate Action Network, will have different congregations be teams, so congregations can challenge each other to take action. And we are experimenting to see whether this strategy is effective. Lastly, I just want to point out that we track impact. In this case, we'll be tracking our self-reports of what people tell us they've done in home energy or in solar, but the software also allows your community to upload data and information from state databases or your partners who may be providing some of these services. All of those data are summed up into the core metrics we're tracking, which is actions completed and households engaged. We're also tracking greenhouse gas emissions saved at an individual level and a community level. We're just not currently showing that in this version of our website. I want to then take us back to examples of when we have actually engaged with a community. As I mentioned, we held 4 heat pump events jointly sponsored in 2 communities. And as part of those events, we rolled out a survey to better understand what residents were worried about with heat pumps and what they saw as the greatest advantage. one of the first questions in the survey I'm not showing the response to, but I think it's really important for context, is we asked the respondents to self-identify. Would they consider themselves super green? Are they very environmentally motivated? Are they not green at all? Or somewhere in the middle? More than half of the respondents would have characterized themselves as pretty green. So I think it's a fairly environmentally motivated early adopter group that showed up at our 4 events, totaling over 250 people. So here's what they said they thought the greatest benefits were. Majority wanted to reduce oil, gas, or energy use. You can see 2/3 wanted to reduce oil or gas. Over 50% were interested in a heating and cooling source where they could green the electricity providing that source, and 44% were interested in more efficient. It was interesting to us that 1/3 of the respondents were drawn to the air conditioning benefits of heat pumps. We saw that particularly for people who had oil systems and no cooling. It was a lower priority for our respondents in terms of cost savings. So that was not what was driving their motivation to take action. Now, what are they worried about? More than half of them are worried about installation costs, and 1 in 5 are worried about operating costs. I think the rebates that Jacqueline talked about obviously help offset that, but this is a very significant expenditure. And this is probably not a surprise to most of you to see that. I think the second one is very interesting to us and is where we're spending a lot of time at the community level. What we heard from respondents was that they're really worried about making a mistake. None of us want to feel like we made a choice that was not well informed, because it's a 20-year choice. And so they are very concerned about making a mistake, and they don't know which contractor to choose. I think things like the solarized models that identified preferred vendors for community have been very effective, and we're experimenting with things like that. That's what is getting in the way of some action. And in the sort of third category, 20% or so, 1 in 5 are telling us, gosh, I really don't understand how these things work, and I'm not sure they work in my climate. So I think we have some residual resistance or concerns, do heat pumps really work in cold climates? And of course, folks are confused about rebates, which seems reasonable. This is our team of software programmers, designers, and some of our leadership team. We have a much larger team now working with us, and although we're in 5 communities, we have about 4 others lined up to work with us, and we're really hoping to be in many, many more communities over this next year. I will stop sharing my screen now. Bev?
Hi, everybody. So we did have a few questions for Ellen about who has paid for this computer web platform that you've developed that can be customized, and could it be spread to other states, other communities? Sort of, are you looking for additional funding, and how do you expect to expand?
Great. So every nonprofit would answer the question, are you looking for additional funding, with a yes. So let me lead with that. We have had some small, we really have been funded in 2 ways. We've had some small foundation support that has enabled us to develop this first round and to pilot it with 5 communities. We are hoping, our plan is to make this available to everybody who wants it, because it has really been filling a need for us. We are thinking through different funding models at this point to make it affordable for a nominal fee for any community that wants to use it. So please contact us and we'll see how we can work with you. Some communities have been able to pay us a nominal fee. Others, we've been trying to figure out other ways to make that work. So let's talk. But we would definitely appreciate some broader support that will allow us to continue to make this free for anybody who wants it, and support mostly our RT team.
So we also have a number of questions related for Peter and Jacqueline, related to how do you educate contractors about electrification and sort of the process, which sometimes straddles different trades and general contractors and subcontractors.
That's a great question. I think we really need an all of above strategy to inform contractors, get the message out there. I think a lot of the same concepts of our Clean Energy Lives Here campaign have to be applied to industry as well. So how do we inform them about these opportunities? How do we provide the education about how this is actually done, as well as how do we create the demand for it?
And we had a question, well, actually we had several questions about whether New Hampshire and New York have similar programs to Mass Save and anything like Whole Home Pilot. And to be honest, I don't really know. I think NYSERDA has some similar programs to Mass Save. I am not sure about every community in the Northeast, but I think we have plenty of people in the NESE community that would be able to answer that. And I guess I would encourage folks who had those questions about their particular state in the feedback questionnaire to specifically pose that, and we can see if we can hook you up with people who might be able to answer those questions. And obviously, if you are a policymaker and interested in setting something like that up, I think Massachusetts, we could definitely put you in touch with people running these programs and sort of how they've evolved over time. There's a question about what percentage of households in Massachusetts are low-income households. And I guess I want to tease out something. So Peter talked about low-income households often having to spend more than a month of their income on energy. I think the flip side of that, like he showed the energy burden for different categories, most Massachusetts residents spend less than a week of their annual income on energy. And I think that's sort of an interesting flip side of this, is that for most people, it's not a real big piece of their budget, their annual budget. And especially when people pay automatically online, they may not even see what they're using, or it may not, you know, sort of calculate in their minds. And then middle income, so say it's a single earner, so like maybe a firefighter with 2 children, we're often talking about maybe 2 weeks of their annual income that goes to energy. But what gets really dramatically different is when you hit that low income. And in low income, we define, at least the Mass Save programs that provide fuel assistance, they use the metric of 60% of state median income. And to be honest, I am not sure. That is something I should know, and I do not know. And it's something we can get back to you on. A lot of feedback for Ellen about the software sounds great, and the devil's in the details with all the recommendations, which is definitely true. Some questions about the maintenance cost of heat pumps and what should be maintenance for air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps.
So we typically recommend that homeowners get a maintenance check with their installer every 1 to 2 years based on what the installer recommends. And then there is a small maintenance cost with cleaning filters or replacing filters as they get dirty, depending on just air quality and how dirty they get over the months of usage. I'd have to get back to you on exact maintenance numbers.
There have been several questions about how to get in touch with us, and I think we will definitely, there'll be a survey sent around to get feedback, and we will definitely make sure that some of the links to the resources that were on the slides come out, and that our contact information of all the speakers is included.
Yeah, and that is on one of the introductory slides that I failed to put up at the beginning, but you should be able to see that when the slides are sent out.
And I see Miriam.
I'm back. I've been here all along. Thank you so much. We're just wrapping it up. Thanks to everyone who joined us, to our speakers, our moderator, and to Mass CEC. Right at the end of this webinar, everybody who's attending, you will receive in your browser a request to fill out a survey to give us feedback. Please do that right away. You'll also be getting an email soon with a certificate, a little bit of information about, I think we should be able to make slides available. There are a couple questions about that, and a little bit more information that we should be able to provide to you. So please, in the survey, don't be shy about telling us what you think and what you'd like to see. And I hope everyone stays well, and keep an eye out for more opportunities to connect with and learn from each other via NESE in the near future. Thanks again.